B. Wells program. Mr. Wells is also the former Saturday night host of Coast to Coast AM from January 2012 to January 2014. A master of persuasive speaking, he has been an internationally renowned voiceover artist for the past 35 years. He's a graduate of Texas Christian University. He has a global reputation for multiplying the prosperity of his clients as he specializes in interviewing guests from all walks of life, bringing his listening audience dynamic interpretations of current events, government conspiracies and cover-ups, UFOs, extraterrestrials, and all things curious and unexplained. He's a visual and audio communications specialist and can help you with radio, TV, film, and preparing for interviews with all three. Ladies and gentlemen, John B. Wells.
It's nice to be with you all, and thank you very much for that very kind introduction. What we're going to talk about today, or what I'm going to talk about, and then I'll speak with you, is what I found out later on after having done it is, if you will, the art of conducting an interview, and also the artistic component in being interviewed by someone in a way where you're effectively in one dimension. I mean, now this is a Skype transmission, so you have the benefit of seeing me, and I suspect I'll see you at some point. Maybe not. But over the years, and because I have the advantage over many, because when you can't read body language and you can't see a 2-minute warning or a minute or a don't go there symbol or a everything's all right, circular fingers okay signal, you, whether you know it or not, you'll learn how to read people simply by listening to their voices. And after you've done it enough, now I didn't know this until later, so by my telling you this, and forgive me if I state something that should be obvious. There are many things that are obvious to people, but occasionally they need a reminder. And so that's what I'll do. You will learn this whether you are concentrating on learning it or not. It will happen. But you listen for example, in the voiceover business, before all this computer editing made it possible to eliminate all of the breathing, little mouth smacks that you would get, things like that. You had to do it while the recording was occurring. And so I learned in those days that if, and I'll tell you how it started. When I got on this little mom and pop radio station, I would read a long sentence, and I was a little nervous to be broadcasting at all, even though it was a little mom and pop radio station with a directional signal, strong here when you go halfway down the block and you can't hear it at all. That's what I mean by directional. A couple of people ribbed me about taking little quick breaths in between words. I thought, well, I don't like that very much. So I learned to breathe on and. It's okay to breathe on and or, you see? And so I was able to gain a reputation for, well, does this guy have gills or what? It's like, no, it's just learning where to breathe, and in some cases where you cannot break a sentence. And you cannot change the sentence because the writer says so. It has to be this way. Then, I mean, sometimes you're suffering. It even went to inhale deeply, push it all down into the gut, stretch the lungs, do a little bronchodilation, and then you could have a nice long sentence and you just wouldn't skip a beat. Now, what does this have to do with talking on the radio? People who are not practicing this, you can tell when they're about to take a break, or you'll hear them do a little something that indicates to you that they want to speak. If you do not obey this signal, then that's when you talk over each other. And for whatever reason, much like it is in an actual conversation with a person, it's unpleasant when people are talking. When you are being interviewed by a radio talk show host, remember these things. Number one, talk radio show hosts are trained, either directly or indirectly, to remain in control of the interview at all times. That said, some of them will get a wee little bit carried away and they'll wind up doing all the talking. Now, actually, Dan Johnson is pretty darn good at this, and I'll tell you why. He says his piece, but he breaks it in a way that if you want to get in and say, but what do you mean by that, Dan? Then he'll say, well, and he'll clarify it quickly, and then he'll stop again. Now, Dan is very, very easy to interview for the host, but there's a flip side of that coin, and that is, how easy is the host you're speaking with going to be to deal with when you want to say something, or when you're halfway through a cogent point, and now you have to stop for a break. So number one, listen for the voice signals, or any kind of pause, or you'll sense it that the host is about to say something, and then give them a chance to jump in. If you give them a pause, and it goes more than about, and I mean it, you can get a lot done in 2 seconds, trust me. If it goes more than about 1.5 seconds, hold your position, because the host is going to say something. They're going to. If you give them that leeway, they will, subconsciously or otherwise, they will also give you leeway. So it's a give and take, and it's an actual conversation rather than a competition. You understand, I'm sure. All right. The second one is, you cannot anticipate every question. Well, so a lot of times it's a very good idea to provide a list of questions you would like to be asked. When you do this, think in terms of one of 2 ways. Either you want them to ask you a specific question that you can address, or it'll be a broad topic, and with the presentation to the host of a somewhat broad topic. This is your invitation to elaborate. But remember, you cannot say it all in the course of an interview, and then you're going to have breaks coming up in there and everything else. So keep your thoughts and your responses concise, not necessarily short, but concise, so that at any time in the interview you can be interrupted, but you won't skip a beat. You can just pick up right where you left off. If you go to a break and you haven't completed your paragraph of information, let's say, if the host does not ask you to pick up where you left off, then just say, now if you don't mind, let me finish where we were very quickly, because it leads into the next line of talk. That aside, there's no reason to be nervous. Many people are. People take courses on how to control their nervousness when they speak before a group of people, whether it's a small group or, worse yet, an auditorium full of people. But just remember, you're having a conversation with one person. If anybody else is eavesdropping, you've been to a restaurant before where somebody is having a conversation and they're excited about it, and they really are talking a little bit loud, and you can tell instantly that they're trying to share their conversation with anyone within earshot. I mean, you have to read all these things. You know, communication is based on the psychological aspects of interaction between persons. So, a talk show host will view you as, he's a scientist and you're a very interesting specimen, he's going to look at this. Well, you should do the same thing. Be complimentary, but don't gush. You know, unless you have a rapport already. Great to be back with you again. I really like what you're doing. You know, stuff like that. But remember, it's just a conversation between you and one other person. Banish from your mind any idea that, oh, there are all these people out there, and what are they going to think? I mean, how is this going to be perceived? Don't worry about it. Just talk to the host. That's all. If anybody else is listening, that's extra, and should not be a concern. Now let me get this back up here where it was. Let me see if I can spell. Yeah, I can. Okay. Does this guy really have a 16-character password? Yeah. What else? Any materials that you have. When you provide information to a talk show host, don't send too much. I'm not a believer in ADD, and if there is such a thing, I prefer to think of it as multiple attention capability rather than attention deficit disorder. So, but don't give them too much. Leave those hogs a little hungry, as they say in the farm business, or they won't eat. If you give them too much information to review, I assure you they won't review any of it. And their questions will be not as good as they could have been when presented to you. So just give them a nice taste, but save the real meat for later. Don't give them your entire treatise when a paragraph will do. And now, that's when you're being interviewed. When you're conducting an interview, it's just the opposite. Review your material. Don't do what I did to Dan, which was I had him confused with somebody else. I called him by his last name, the wrong last name. And he said, well, let me just say first, my last name's Johnson. And I went, okay, sorry. If something like that happens, just tell the truth. Just say, well, that's a great way to start off an interview, by calling a man by his last name or a woman by her last name. Sorry about that, but I had you confused with somebody else. I've got the note right here. Sorry. And just go on. If you try to cover up your mistake, it's never going to work. Just admit you screwed up and go on. That's all. And don't make a big deal out of it. Just go, oops, sorry. Brain cell must have died just at the moment I read your name and I read it wrong. And just go on. That's about, I'm thinking that's probably the worst case scenario. And I did it on Coast to Coast AM. But obviously Dan got over it because we're still talking and we're working together on the Solutions Institute. So there you go. Beware of runaway guests. Some guests, you'll be able to tell if they're excited. If they're really excited, just tell them, come on now, slow down just a little bit. There's one fellow in particular named Douglas Dietrich, the renegade historian, supposed to have been the librarian at Presidio or something. Oh my gosh, once Douglas gets rolling, it's kind of hard to stop him. Worst case scenario, you hit the mute button and just say, we'll be right back with our guest, whomever it is, in just a moment. At that point, you do have to take control of the interview. Otherwise, they'll talk right up until the break. If you have to say, hold on, we've got a break coming up. We want to hear everything, but we don't have time for it now because the computer's going to cut it off. We'll be right back with our guest, whomever. All right. But you don't have to just keep it, just like flying an airplane. Don't hold the yoke with your whole hand. Just use your thumb and two fingers. Move briskly, but not abruptly. Learn a lot about life and things that you do in life from flying. It's really true. As you move along through the interview, you'll have an idea from the material that was sent where the beginning, the middle, and the end is. Remember your Greek theater. Every play, and that's what these interviews are, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So craft it. You have a nice introduction, that's interesting. Now let's settle in for the meat of the conversation. Now, unfortunately, in terrestrial radio, there are going to be interruptions. So know this, and it's not a bad idea to remind them. We've got a couple of minutes left, so just tell us quickly, how do we buy your book, or how do we do this? Or if you know that the answer that you're going to ask is going to take more than the time you have remaining in the segment, then just say, we're talking with so-and-so, and it's very interesting. If you're just joining the program, then let me tell you his website and how to reach him. You can email him at this. You can get his book that. It's a very interesting book. I think you'll like it. You can get it at the usual places, Barnes & Noble or Amazon or wherever. And as a matter of fact, you can go directly to the website and do it, and you eat up the time. But be careful, because if you find yourself in a position where you got to make stuff up on the fly and you have 2 minutes to do it, 2 minutes. It's the same rule as you can get a lot done in 2 seconds. It's like 2 minutes of having to pad when you know that what you're coming up on is a very, very long answer. Can be difficult, but it's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. You can manage all of it. And again, you have that mute button as well in case things have to go your way and your way only. Other than that, it's remember, at all times, you're just talking with a person. There's no magic about the fact that they're sitting behind the microphone. You have one too. You just don't necessarily have the headset and the mic right there. It's not an official setting. Don't let any of the trappings of an interview intimidate you in any way. And that goes for whether you are the interviewee or the interviewer. There is something about wearing those headphones for the host that's like, I have power. But people will read that, not with their eyes, but with their ears. So decide what personality you're going to have. Now, once you're seasoned in the business, the personality that you're going to have is going to somewhat automatically craft itself. And then you'll find out from your audience's response as time goes by whether they like it or not. So the idea is to be genuine and contrive as little as possible. But it is a show, so there is a certain amount of sculpting to be done. But it doesn't have to be a total control kind of thing. Don't let your interviewee run you. And on the flip side, don't let the host run you. And remember, if you come on the air and someone starts criticizing you, I was privileged to interview Tom Shadyac. He produced and directed, maybe even wrote. I think he wrote and produced, but I'm not certain at this moment. Stuff with Jim Carrey, like Liar, Liar, and a couple other ones. And he wrote a book, and it was a very sensitive book about human relations, transactional analysis, if you will, if it's a catchphrase from the early 70s. And this guy called up, who was, we took some calls, and this was on Coast to Coast. And this man was quite aggressive, and he was upset about something. And I have to tell you, I admire Tom Shadyac so much because he gently talked this man down, turned his whole attitude around, and it wound up happy. So you're not driving a dump truck. That doesn't require sensitivity. It requires some skill, but it doesn't require much sensitivity because a dump truck is a blunt instrument. Remember this. Oscar Wilde once said, Oscar Wilde is one of my favorites. Oscar Wilde said, if you speak to every man as if you are slightly bored, and you speak with every woman as if you are in love with her, you will be exercising perfect social manners. If you remember that part, it'll serve you well. Now, I've got about 13 till, 12 or 13 till. Would we like to do any questions of any kind?
Certainly, John. Thank you. First question will be from Drew Forsetti in our chat wing. What recommendations would you give to novice show hosts like himself for presenting hard questions without coming across as adversarial, but rather merely allowing them to express their side of the story?
And this is in the context of as a host, and you want to address something that might be a little rough.
Correct.
I would say leave your guest an out. Just be honest. Just tell them, now listen, I want to ask you this. Now, if this is not your thing, and people who have listened to me will know that I say this because I mean it. Your job is not to pull anybody into some sort of a jackpot or to rat them out, unless that is specifically your job to do that. We're going to bring this guy on and we're going to make him reveal himself. People will reveal themselves no matter what you do, but they'll be less inclined to reveal themselves if they feel like they're threatened in any way on any level. So just be honest. Just tell them, I want to ask you about something, but if it's not your thing or you don't want to talk about it, then I won't press it. We'll just go on to the next thing. If you leave them a back door, they'll be more inclined to go along with you. But if you say, now look, I've got a problem with this and I want answers from you, whoa, you shouldn't do that because they won't. They'll just pull back like a horse that doesn't want to be led. But if you go, it's all right. If you don't want to give me a ride today, you don't have to. And the horse will go, I guess I don't mind. He'll come right along with you. And just treat your guest that way. Just be delicate, but don't do any sucking up. Just be honest. If you don't want to talk about this, we won't. But I'd love to hear about it if you're willing to share some of it with us. That's it.
There are lots of radio hosts who would love to take what they do from a hobby to a living. How do you monetize a radio platform?
Well, that's a very good question. Let me think about that just for a minute so that I can give an answer that he can or she can use. Most things in this life have to be somebody else's idea. So, and I can only draw on my own experience, but if you are working on it, first of all, I recommend that everyone pick someone that produces work that they admire. You can't copy them no matter what you do. I mean, unless you're an impressionist. You don't want to do that. You want your own individuality. But let, unbeknownst to the object of your admiration, let them be your teacher and just see what they do and try to determine what it is that makes them able to do what they do. Then someone will come to you. In other words, be available, be visible, understand that the margins are quite low now because so many people are doing it. And just be ready when the little red light comes on. Of course, you know, whether it's the air light or whether it's the camera light. The way that you monetize it is first you have to have your toolkit, you have to have your skill set ready to go. Then you need, number two, you need the opportunity. Then after that is the performance. And you'll find out if they're liking what you're doing. If they say, well, I wish you wouldn't be so this way or that way or the other, just say, all right, can you give me an idea of how I'm doing that, and I'll work on it. Well, it just seems like you're talking down to people. Or, well, it seems like you're letting them run all over you. Let's go, all right, well, I'll work on that, and I'll just assume greater control. Your being hired by someone is not so much you're talking them into it, but them offering the position to you. Now, as far as monetizing it is concerned, the only way to monetize anything in radio these days, because like it or not, radio is not the dynamic medium that it once was. Why? Not everybody wants to tune in at a certain hour to hear a certain show or program, really. It's not a show because you can't see it. They want what they want when they want it. Hence the podcast situation. But if we're talking about radio, the monetization is going to come strictly from advertising. And once you're on the air for a while, it'll be their idea. You know, people will call you and say, I'd like to, who can you put me in touch with? I really like your show. I like what you're doing, and I'd like to advertise my product on your show. At that point, you are one of two things. You're either a station employee and it won't make any difference if you run any commercials, or it could because you're getting a paycheck, or you say, I'll take a little bit of money, but I would like to attract some advertisers to the program. I will actively pursue some good advertisers, and I'd like a little percentage of that. That's how it goes. First, you need to be ready. Then you need the opportunity. Then you need the performance, and then you need the invitation to do more. After that, people will invite themselves to your party, or you can invite them to your party by way of advertising. I hope that answers the question.
Certainly. From a fellow SI advisor, Ford Fisher, in media, whether radio or otherwise, should you be concerned when bringing on a controversial figure that by bringing that person on, you are, quote, endorsing them, unquote, by doing so? And then also, how do you make it clear that you don't endorse them without alienating them or distancing yourself from that guest?
Well, now that's interesting. Keep in mind that you cannot anticipate the reaction from every listener. And no matter what you do, someone is not going to like it. If you work for a corporation and 99,999 people loved what you do, but one came in and bothered everybody from the staff to the sales department to the people up on Mahogany Row, that one squeaking wheel is going to get the grease. They're going to pay attention to that one. So that aside, You just tell them, just again, be honest. You're a person of some controversy. And what I know about your positions on certain things, I must tell you that I am not in total agreement, but I'm willing to change my mind if you can make a compelling case for it. So I'm just one person, but I am the one who's conducting this interview with you. So do your best to change my mind, because at this point I cannot sign on to much of what you say. Well, I understand that, and let me tell you, I mean, what's your problem with what I say? Well, you said that this went that way when there's evidence to the contrary that it didn't. Now, I haven't personally investigated this and determined that the evidence to the contrary is absolutely, completely true, but that's why we're here to discuss it. But I must tell you, it's going to take some convincing, so just let me have it and straighten me out where I'm wrong. Again, just be honest. And if it goes badly, then just say, okay, well, you've just validated my opinions, and it's not my part to be rude to anyone who has acquiesced to an interview, but I think we're done here, and I wish you well, and that's it. Bye-bye. And that's it. You're done. Got me?
Fantastic. From Ed Lee, can you tell us a little bit more about how to deal with hostile caller or host when being interviewed?
Well, I'll act it out for you. Tom Danheiser, for whatever reason, let the same guy come on to Coast to Coast when I was doing open lines. And he sounded like he was 2 or 3 drinks into it, 3 or 4 wines, you know, and 2 or 3 whiskeys, maybe one or the other, maybe both. And he was saying stuff like, he just can't get it cleaned up for you. You just, black man, just can't clean up the white man's mess fast enough. And I went, make. And he kept talking. I went, make. And he kept going. I said, oh, you'd give an aspirin a headache, pal. Borrowing from the Duke in that movie Layer Cake. And I just said, get out of here. Go on, get out of here. What is wrong with this man? Oh, well. Maybe he'll call back and he'll be in a better humor next. It's no big deal. Just don't insult anybody. You know, don't give them any reason to like start stalking you or something. You know, by saying, "Oh, you smarmy little bleep." You know, you don't want to do that. Don't engage them. You are the hawk that has been let off of its tether and has flown up to the phone lines, and now every little bird in the neighborhood is gathered on the phone lines around it. They're all chirping and raising hell, but none of them are going to come near those talons.
Indeed.
That's the position that you're in. You have the control, but use it judiciously, use it humanely. But if somebody's out of control, you know, people can hear you roll your eyes going, oh Lord, what is on with this? What is this guy on about? Or you could go, or you can just turn him around, do what Shadyac did. Just say, come on, man, come on, talk to me. We have this moment here. What's the matter? Come on. It's just you and me and a few thousand people listening in on this conversation. What's eating you? What's up? Just hit it head on. And if it's just about, all right, I've got to let you go. We're not getting anywhere. I tried, but you wouldn't listen. So bye-bye. Just keep it light. Don't worry about it. It's nothing to go home and stay awake. It's nothing that should keep you from your sleep. It's just a person. That's all.
We have about a minute breaking up into our intermission for today, so I have one more for you.
Okay.
For people who would like to be guests on various radio shows, when you look for radio guests, how do you pick the ones that eventually get invited on your show?
Well, that's a good question. Now, with some people, you'll see their work and you go, I've got to talk to this person. And so you call your person that does the booking, and they'll reach out to their publicist probably. In some cases, it'll be that person directly. And there are several services out there that buy guests. There are several publicists. What is it? Sandy something. I can't even remember. I've seen it so many times. You know how it is when you see the same thing over and over again, but can't tell anybody what color it is or what corner of the street it's on. You just know how to get there. You can just do a search. I recommend Start Page for that. And by the way, say a prayer. If you pray, say a little prayer for Catherine Albrecht, because she just had 2 brain tumors removed in 11-hour surgery. And this Iron Maiden is walking around and up and trying to get on with her life. So send some good thoughts toward her. There are a number of services that will provide them for you, but generally what I do is I look at their work and go, I need to talk to this person. This person really has something to bring to the party. Let's see if we can get him or her. That's how it's done. Just go out there and get them. Some of them will come to you. And there are services.
So I'm actually going to jump in here real quickly. Because we have intermission coming up, there are 2 more questions in the chat wing that if you could provide a short answer to, that'd be wonderful.
I'll make it
do want to get all these questions in.
Right.
So number 1, from Drew in the chat wing, person can use to quote unquote control the dialogue.
Say the first part again. I missed the first half.
Bobby, you want to read these off? I'm partly breaking up.
Some methods a person can use to control the dialogue.
It varies. There are 2 ways to do it. One of them is, depending on the personality of the person that you're interviewing, you can jump in frequently. In other cases, it's necessary to just let them go until they kind of run out of steam. But again, it depends on the personality of the person that you're interviewing. In any case, it goes without saying that you have the control. And again, there's always the mute switch. But most people are not going to get into a brawl with you during an interview. That's rare. You should just keep in the back of your mind that this can happen, and then just be prepared to be dignified about it and just get out of it. Rather than smacking them, just deflect and go on. That's about the best answer I can give you, because this is an unknown. Personalities are dynamic. Some are rather mellow and some are not. Jesse Ventura comes to mind.
If you have a social stream during your show, how do you deal with the difficult people?
You just tell them, listen, this is supposed to be a friendly conversation, and if it's not going to be friendly, and if it's not going to be conducted in mutual respect, we're going to have to move on. Then what's it going to be? That's how I do it. Now, my method is not for everybody, but it's like the old king said, get gold. Humanely, if possible, but get gold. And that's what you have to do. You have to be able to go from, pardon me, to now look. Just don't be ugly. Do not attack back. Just treat them as if it's some bunny that's snuggled up to your neck, but now it's threatening to bite you if you try and move it away from it, okay? And move it away from you. Just treat it like that. You don't really have to take the bunny and dash it against the wall. That's the best answer I can give you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John. We so much appreciate your appearance on the ActCon conference today. And of course, absolutely enjoy working with you with the Solutions Institute, of course. Wonderful that you're one of the advisors to the organization. And I look forward to talking to you, working with you in the future.
Thank you very much. Just remember what G. Edward Griffin said, 1% can change the world. It's good to be working with the 1%. Take it easy out there.